going to do the silhouette style, play number 8 in the Pet Stylist Playbook on Baxter here.
He's really excited. He is like ready to be groomed.
He didn't realize how much it is in staging with the lights and the cameras and getting the right angles, so he's just ready to get this going.
In the Pet Stylist Playbook, we break down these grooms into the most basic elements. So we're going to focus on the head, the ears, the body, the feet, and the tail. Let's get started.
What you're going to do when you start your silhouette trim is remove all the undercoat, whatever's left from the bath. So we've done a lot of deshedding in the tub, and we've blow dried this dog, but there's still some undercoat that we could remove. So I'm going to start from the back end and line brush. Once I use my slicker brush, I'm going to use my undercoat rakes, starting with my coarse and then moving to my fine. In the same pattern, the up and forward pattern, using the line brush technique.
When Sierra is mucking in the area of the shoulder muscle or the thigh muscle, we want to expose those because it makes the dog look more powerful. And if we're grooming the dog for movement, which means how they look when they're walking around, and if you imagine the dogs going around the show ring, those haircuts are meant to emphasize the dog's best features. So we want to do that too, even in the pet grooming salon. And that's why we want to think of the dog's structure and anatomy, even when we're doing things like removing undercoat.
And pay attention to my left hand. Just like hand stripping, I'm pulling the skin tight, so I'm not bouncing that skin. So every time I move on this dog, I'm pulling it tight above it. Because carding and hand stripping, technically this is a hand stripping technique, right? What we're doing. We are pulling out undercoat using a tool, whether it's your thumb included or not. When I'm pulling the skin tight, it is pulling less on my hair. And Mr. Baxter here has a lot of undercoat. And as a professional groomer, this is where we can help most. And sometimes groomers kind of slack in this area. Undercoat removal on our silhouette breeds on play number 8, a lot of the groom, I would say 80% of the groom is removing the undercoat with special tools. So I used my coarse undercoat rake. Now I'm going to use my fine undercoat rake. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to go start from the back. I'm going to go up and forward using my line brush technique. Holding the skin above it tight.
Going with the lay of the coat is super important on pretty much every breed except for the dogs that have standout coats. We want to work with the hair and not against it. If we go in reverse with a rake, it not only is it going to pull on the hair and cause discomfort to the dog, but it's also going to give a less natural finish. You're going to get cowlicks. It can actually break the coat and cause damage. So we always want to make sure we're working with the direction that the coat naturally grows. It goes down at an angle on the sides. In the middle strip of the back, it goes straight back. On the shoulders, we're starting to go at a 45-degree angle. So just pay attention to the natural grain of the hair, and you want to work with it and not against it.
I removed the undercoat with a slicker brush, a coarse, and a fine undercoat rake. The last step of deshedding Baxter's body is using an undercoat comb. There's 2 different lengths of teeth, and that helps grab all of the hair, the undercoat, that I couldn't grab with the other 3 tools. So I'm going to use my tangle-free spray. Lightly give it a little mist. I notice the hair is starting to get staticky, and I don't want to work against myself. So I'm using the same up and forward motion, using line brushing technique, starting at the back of the dog. And it kind of pulls, but not enough that it's matted. It's just grabbing the undercoat. And once it stops that slight grab, that means you are removing that undercoat. And if it does kind of grab, I might have to take my slicker brush or my undercoat rake and remove more hair at that one spot. But so far, so good. I'm going to work on Baxter's head. He is a Corgi Australian Shepherd mix, and there's some undercoat that I could clearly see that's sitting up here that a rake, a comb, a brush wouldn't pick up, so I'm going to use my carding knife, starting with my coarse and ending with my fine. And then I'm also going to, there's a lot of hair here on his cheeks that I'm going to take my thinning shear and just bulk out a little bit. And the purpose with this is he kind of just looks like a little Tasmanian devil. There's a lot of hair just sticking out. And as a groomer, we just need to know where that hair belongs and how it needs to lay flat. And really, truly, this part, I'm going to take a minute here with my coarse and look at all this undercoat that I grabbed at the top of its head. You can also use your carding knives on the front of the leg and other spots on the dog. I'm going to switch to my fine carding knife and do the same thing. I want the dome of his head to sit flat and not have that Grinch-like hair sticking out. And notice I'm holding his skin tight and I'm going with the grain of the hair. Now that I have that done, I'm going to move on to the sides of his cheeks. And I'm going to bulk out some of this longer hair. So then he could have more of a defining face. I'm going to make sure you don't cut the ear. If you're in doubt, you guys have heard me say this 1,000 times. If you think you're going to cut something on the dog, put your finger there. I am coming from behind and thinning right on the side of the dog's face. I'm thinning out that hair. I'm going to take my slicker brush. I'm going to look at this dog on profile. Do you see how nice that sits? Just taking those 5 little clips out. First this side. This, if you look at what I've already completed, this looks nice. This looks like a little chunky. Now imagine if we could just do that to our double chins. So we're going to come up from behind. When I'm doing this, when I'm bulking out and trying to show he has more of a face feature and not Grinchy or Tasmanian devil, I'm just using the tips of my shears, and I'm not opening and closing like this. I'm just moving like this because I don't want to remove a ton of it. Okay. So now let's check our cheeks here. Now, oh man, he looks so nice. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the same thing I did on this side to this side. So the last part I have on his head, not including his ears, is his crest hair. This also, if you, and you don't have to do this every time the dog comes in, unless he comes in once a year or something like that. You can lose a lot of the hair you need that falls into the ear and the chest piece. So what I'll do, I'll comb everything up with his crest, and you're gonna see why. Anything that sits past his occiput here, his skull, this all needs cut off. I'm going to take my thinning shears and I'll hold down his ear. Anything that sits past this ear bowl, I'm going to trim off. And like how I did it earlier, check your work. You don't have to trim and be trim happy. There's a lot of downy undercoat just right here. So after I took everything that sits past my ledge on his crest on the back of the skull, I'm going to take my carding knife and grab those little pieces. There's not a lot. I'm also going to dually use my carding knife and hand strip some of this out. And when we hand strip dogs, it doesn't mean we have this beautiful, well-bred schnauzer that's in a rolled coat. You could use these techniques on almost a lot of the dogs that we do groom. It's just knowing how to do it. So now I'm going to check that piece now, make sure my transition is blended and beautiful. I haven't done my ears yet, so Don't look at this piece, just look right here, this transition area. I think it looks really nice. It's blended. His skull matches his crest now. It's not this crazy, whimsical Grinch hair right here. We don't want him to look like a gremlin. We gave him a chin line, and now he has a really pretty neckline. I'm gonna do that to this side.
When we're just using the tips of our shears, we're doing that for control. It's to be really intentional about what part of the blade is actually doing the cutting. We don't want the full length of the blade to do the cutting, because then we kind of lose that really specific area that we're working on.
Let's check what he looks like. Not looking at the front of his ears. We're looking at the top part of his skull into his crest. I'm going to double check my work now. And I'm gonna pull that crest hair up towards his skull and see if there's any piece that is noticeable. And I just see this one piece right here, and that's because I didn't card it out. So it's soft, it's downy. What I'm gonna take is my carding knife. I'm gonna card it out. It's not carding out, so I'm gonna use my dual purpose, my tool here, use it as a stripping knife. That means I'm adding my thumb movement into the carding technique. So that way I could grip the hair and pull out this dull, downy hair.
So if Baxter had hair, fill hair on the back of his ear, or if his ears were really hairy, we would want to shape this coat in a continuous line from the tip of his ear into his neck. He doesn't, so we're just going to imagine that this is going to be a line, and we're going to clean up this wispy stuff by ledge grooming.
I'm going to take my comb and just lightly comb it towards the dog's face, and I'm going to make this a blended area, and I'm going to ledge groom with my thinning shears. He does not like his face held. I'm going to continue that ledge grooming from his ear set to his neck to blend into his chest. And with silhouette, if you think of it like a parameter trim, or think of the stickers on the back of a car, like the family stickers, we want to make a nice outline of the dog. So even though there's not a ton of hair on his ear that I need to trim off, I'm going to ever so lightly just put that line back in so it looks fresh and clean. Because I combed everything forward and checked my ledge line there, I'm gonna comb everything into the back of his crest, into its chest, and just see if this continuation, if this is a nice blended area, and I think it looks good. There's one spot right here that I'm going to come in and just poke out. It's a little staticky. So this is the purpose. If you just saw that just raise up, that's why we like to use some static control here. I think that looks really nice. I'm gonna move on to the body, and I'm gonna start with the chest. His chest is a little long. It just needs some shape. So when you use your comb, you're going to use the ledge grooming technique, and I'm combing everything to one side. I combed everything to one side. Now I'm going to trim that ledge. If you can see this right here, ever so lightly. I'm not digging in the coat. I'm taking the tips off. This is a silhouette trim. We're not reimagining the dog's shape. We're just making him look nice and finished. So I combed everything to this side, right? And I trimmed everything. I had this spot look nice and blended, nice transition line. So I'm going to comb everything towards the middle of the chest. Same thing. I was looking here. Now I'm gonna move ever so slightly so I can see this angle. And I'm going to put that nice silhouette outline on what I could view with my naked eye. Remember, you can't groom the dog standing in the same spot, so you will have to ultimately move. You have to be able to see the hair that you're going to trim. I combed everything to the middle, and what I'm doing is ever so lightly. You don't have to cut off a lot of hair. This hair does take time to grow. All we're doing is putting in a nice silhouette outline trim. And I'm making this line good, and it's wrapping all the way to the belly, all the way to the underline. You're not reinventing a haircut. You're just blending our lines. Okay, so once I combed everything to one side and then the middle, I'm going to put its neck up. I'm gonna comb everything up. And anything that sits really bulky, just like how we did his cheek lines, I'm gonna come in and make sure he doesn't have a double chin as well. I'm gonna come in and bulk trim with the tips of my shears so I have control. Especially when this genetic code goes from a short coat to a longer coat, it's our job just to make sure that transition is pretty. I'm gonna comb out everything I just bulked out, have that sit down prettier. Now that I have his front done, I need to continue this underline that I started here. I'm gonna pick up his front leg, I'm gonna move it in the motion he's used to. If you notice, the tool that I'm using ultimately, other than my undercoat removal tools, is my thinning shear. I'm gonna extend his chest into his underline. Imagine if you didn't have a leg, you would want this all to be one line. And it ever so slightly dips up. And you know, he's a corgi, so there's not a lot of room down here as they ride pretty short to the ground. So we get a little awkward. I'm using thinning shears because silhouette dogs, we're not reinventing the haircut. A lot of this is, we want this dog to look as natural as possible. I'm matching my underline on the front of the chest. But once I connect this underline, I'm gonna go on the other side and do that as well. So I've made my line. Now all of this hair that's super, it's just drops down, right? We need a little bit of a transition. So what I like to do is just lift the hair ever so slightly. I lifted the coat up. What I'm going to do is I'm going to blend that transition in using like a 45-degree angle. That way this transition is blended and it's not heavy, and I can bulk out the area. The front of this knee right here, I also need to clean that up and put that natural. The genetic code here, you can see it's shorter and then he has longer hair. So it's our job to connect and blend that transition of phenotype. That the genetic code is reading off and telling the hair to grow. And notice I'm not using my hand to find the pieces. I'm using my comb, which is technically the connection of our hands to check our work. Because if I take my two fingers that's not actually the hair that you're going to be able to grab. You can't grab as much hair, and it's not going to be as even as a comb would be. So if you feel guilty of that, that's okay. Just make the change now. Same thing. I'm going to make him from 2D to 3D. I'm going to remove this big giant ledge right here. Blend that transition. I'm only working on his outline. I'm not working everything that's inside sitting in the outline. This is to come. I have his front done, his underline done, his knee done. I'm going to move out to the outline to his back end. I'm combing everything to one side and everything that sits past my imaginary line. If you look at this dog, this shape right here, if he shows you his legs nicely, you're going to see almost a triangle, or better yet, if you could really imagine going back to our shape lessons, a triangle and then a square, like a little house. That's the line I'm imagining when I comb everything over to ledge groom. So I'm going to, this triangle right here, that is what I'm going to trim on when I'm ledge grooming, is that shape right there. I'm going to do that to this side. I'm ledge grooming, I'm combing everything to one side. I'm trimming that desired shape, that desired line. I'm going to move down the dog's leg and go straight down so it matches the top of his hock. You put your finger down and you find that hock, that's where you want that transition line, and that's when you could start seeing the hair is really short here compared to what his butt hair is showing you. So once you put that line in, you're going to comb everything to the other side. And this one's easier to see. I'm going to cut everything on this outside ledge because you want everything to sit inside of the dog so he doesn't look dumpy. And now that I set my points from A to B, I'm going to lift the hair ever so slightly. This is where a lot of groomers get really creative. Some owners, especially with corgis, they want like they call it like the bubble butt, the Nicki Minaj butt. They want a heart on the butt. This is where you really could carve in, but I go for the natural look always, especially on my silhouette trims. If this is an Australian Shepherd or a Border Collie, that's what I'm going to show you today. So ever so slightly, I'm not here to reimagine the dog's haircut. He is just showing us his two-step and moves. And I'm connecting my A to B. So I have those 2 points that I combed over using the ledge grooming techniques. And now my eyes know where to go. Comb down, check your work. You're not reimagining the dog's groom. All we are doing is making sure they have a really nice silhouette, which that cheek looks nice. Move to this side. I have my profile, my silhouette in now. The only thing that my eye is catching on the body is directly this piece right here. Now I don't want to bulk it out. I don't want to thin it out. If I have to, I will, but just know every time you mess with this coat right here, you want it to sit down flat, but it's not going to come in. It's going to grow in a whole bunch of different lengths, and we don't really want that. Now we bulked out the sides of the cheeks and the neck where that was okay because it has the short coat to the long coat and we had to. This all needs to grow at the same length, and that's probably why this is all growing. It's just catching your eye, right? So I'm going to take my carding tools and try to grab that coat out manually without cutting it out and see if I could make this little spot a little better. That was with my horse. Gonna move down to my fine and see if I can make this transition a little nicer. Now let's check what it looks like. I think that sat down really pretty. Same thing right here. My eye's catching that as well. I'm going to just take my fine and try to make this look nice, a prettier transition. Okay, so we have his head, his ears, his body. All we have left to do is his feet, his legs, and his tail. So let's do his legs and feet next. I'm going to back brush, brushing against the grain on this foot here. Going to take my thinning shears, and I'm going to blend the long hair to the short hair and trim up all those little grinchy hairs. Not cutting into the coat, I'm only grabbing the longer hair that his genetic code isn't, just the Grinch type hairs. Sometimes you do have to go in between the toes, space them out, and make sure you grab those little longer hairs. And there's the foot. I'm going to do that to all of the feet real quick. Once again, back brushing everything. I'm holding his leg in a position that is comfortable to him. I'm not holding it out like this. I'm keeping it tight. I'm keeping the foot underneath the hip. And it's kind of hard on corgis because they don't have a lot of room down here as they are low to the ground. All right. Now I'm going to work on his feathers, the hair right here. And what's important to know when you're doing feathers, you also don't need to cut off a lot of hair. What you want to make sure when you're trimming their feathers is everything that sits underneath the dog is underneath the dog. This is sticking out. So if you look at what the dog is right here, first that, I'm going to comb everything to one side. Take my thinning shears. I'm going to put everything underneath the dog again. Remember, you do not have to reinvent the haircut. We are just putting in a nice silhouette trim. So once you remove that bulk hair, that hair that was just sticking out immensely, you're going to comb everything to one side again. And you can pick up that leg and everything that sits past this past stern right here. Going to make this line connect, and then just follow the guideline that I already did with ledge grooming before. I'm going to rest that leg, and sometimes your transition from what's a leg and what's an underline, this is a little heavy right here, so I'm going to pick up that dog's leg again. I'm going to thin this out. It's just sticking out from his armpit. And it's still kind of being tricky, so I'm going to let him sit there. I'm going to take the furnishings with my hands and remove that one piece that keeps sticking out. Baxter doesn't have a ton of hawk hair. I don't know if that's because the groomer last time took it completely off, or if you notice he has like some redness to his toes, if he's just having some allergy issues or if he's like chewing off the hair. But what I normally would do, I'm going to leave it be for the most part. But a hawk hair, you want it completely, you would take this bone right here. You want this to be completely straight down. Most of the time we're doing corrective grooming for hot hair, but what we're doing is making the bone structure look really nice, even though maybe underneath the dog's hair, the bone structure isn't. So this is what we would do for corrective grooming and leave just a little bit of fill hair. When we do our tails, we want it to look as natural as possible. So when we set our points, you want to know where that tailbone's at. So always feel for that. So I know it's pretty up there. It's a good inch away from the tail. He is more of a stub than a tailbone. So I'm going to start with point A. And instead of carving my line from here to here and making that crescent, that like half moon shape, we start with point A and then we're gonna bevel up and cross check, make sure it's symmetrical, and just work on that bevel. Remember, we don't have to cut a lot of hair off on these silhouette trims. Pick it up a little bit and grab the hairs you can't grab with that stub being down. Let's cross check again. Looks nice. When you're trimming a silhouette coat, remember our whole job is to put that silhouette outline in, but to really keep the integrity of the coat in the breed standard, whether it's a mixed breed like this one or border collie.
Usually that means just trimming as much as possible. Every time that we trim on this coat, it's not really meant to be trimmed with scissors. It's mostly meant to be shaped by hand or with undercoat removal tools. So less is always more with these coat types. We don't want them to get crispy hair that like just sticks straight out. We want to just try to keep that integrity so that the coats lay nice and smooth. And all we're doing is just enhancing the natural beauty of the coat. That's why with tails like this, we just try to trim just the underneath, make sure that there's nothing hanging down that's going to get dirty from going potty or anything like that. But we really just try to leave it as natural as we can. We only want to trim those pieces that are detracting from the natural shape of the dog's coat.
And as a pet groomer, we're going to see a lot of breeds like this come in, and this is our job. Where if you were a show groomer and had your breed standard dog, it's all natural, they would be plucking and doing all the things. This is just our job to keep being professional and keep the integrity of their coat.